In a classical work written 250 years ago, David Hume was interested in the ease with which many are governed by the few, the absolute submission with which men resign their fate to their leaders. He thought that this was strange because force is always on the side of the governed. If people understood this, they would revolt and remove the leaders. And it was this conclusion that the foundation of a government is the ability to control the public mind, which applies to the most tyrannical and military governments, as well as the most free and popular. But without a doubt, David Hume did not realize how powerful brute force can be. It is truer to say that the more free and popular a society is, the more opinion control is needed to keep people in line with the leaders. I will show you 6 historical and current reasons why the ability to control the public mind is crucial for any government. Reason number 1, origin of public control. Truthful democracies are based on the idea that rulers need consent from the governed. But according to modern progressive ideas, the people may be spectators, but they should not be participants unless they get to choose leaders who truly have power. The average person should not be allowed to participate in the economic sphere, which determines most of what happens in society. And most democratic theories say that the person or the people should not have any say in this. Reason number 2, the control of public opinion. But where did all of this come from? History shows that it began in England in about the 1600s. There was a tremendous disagreement between the king and the parliament on who should hold more power. But the truth was that the people didn't want either to rule them. They wanted to be ruled by fellow countrymen who could relate to their problems, not by snobbish knights and gentlemen. The responsible men, or men of best quality, as the rich called themselves, were upset about these problems. They were willing to grant the people rights, but only within certain bounds, and on the grounds that the people does not mean the confused and uneducated mob. So it looks like only some people were supposed to have rights. But the fact is that during that time, the idea that the leaders need to get consent of the governed people was not so easy to suppress. So how were these men of best quality, or the rulers, going to get around this? That leads us to reason number 3, consent without consent. There was a philosopher called Francis Hudson who lived at the same time as David Hume, and he came up with a solution to the issue. He said that the consent of the governed principle is not broken if leaders impose plans that the people don't originally want, but if later the stupid and prejudiced masses heartily consent to what the government or the leaders did in their name, then it is okay. And this explanation captures the real meaning of the principle of consent of the governed. The people must submit to their rulers, and it is enough if they give consent without consent. If you're in a dictator state, force will be used, of course. But if you're in a free state, another tactic can be used. And what is this tactic? It is called public control. When violence is not an option, progressive and liberals say that the manufacture of consent must be used to get people's permission. The thought of the British men of best quality were echoed by the USA founding fathers virtually word for word. According to one man's definition, the public refers only to the rational part of society. The ignorant and rude are just as unqualified to evaluate the government's methods as they are to hold power. Basically, if they're too stupid to evaluate the government's methods, then they should not be able to hold power. And Alexander Hamilton said that the people are a great beast that needs to be tamed. Then this leads us to an important moral thought. Should people who are incompetent be given control of the government or any kind of power at all? Should they even be allowed to decide for themselves? Your thoughts in the comment section below. 5. The origins of modern public control. So that all leads us to one of public control's leading figures. Edward Bernays, he opens by observing that the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in a democratic society. To carry out this essential task, the intelligent minorities must make use of propaganda continuously and systematically, because they alone understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses and can pull the wires with which to control the public mind. So propaganda provides the leadership with a tool to mold the minds of the masses so that they will throw their newly gained strength in the desired direction. And there was another man called Harold Laswell, one of the founders of modern political science. And he warned that the intelligent few must recognize the ignorance and stupidity of the masses and not succumb to democratic dogmatisms about men being the best judges of their own interest. He said that they are not the best judges, we the intelligent few are. The masses must be controlled for their own good, and in more democratic societies where force is unavailable, social managers must turn to a whole new technique of control, largely through propaganda. And that leads us to something called a crisis of democracy. Unfortunately, not everyone is so stupid in the general population, and this presents problems. A crisis of democracy occurs when ordinarily passive and indifferent citizens unite and engage in politics to pursue their interests and demands, and this threatens stability and order. The Wagner Act of 1935 gave normal workers their first big legislative win, the power to organize and form unions. But this caused two major issues. For one, democracy was broken. The confused horde, other stupid people, they just call them stupid, but really what they mean is just the rest of society. So just some of them are stupid and some of them are not. But the confused horde won legislative victories, which wasn't meant to happen. And another issue was that people might become organized. And for people to be easily controlled, they must be isolated and atomized. They shouldn't organize because they might become more than just mere observers as they wanted them to be. If a sizable group of people with a few resources could band together to enter politics, some of them might actually be able to make an impact. And that is very dangerous to those that are already in control. Companies reacted strongly to make sure that this would be the last legislative win for the workers and the beginning of the end in how people were organized. And it actually worked. That was Labor's last legislative victories. From then on, union membership actually increased briefly during World War II and then dropped. And the ability for people to come together and act steadily decreased. And this wasn't random. The corporate community invests a lot of money, time, and thinking into solving these issues through the public relations sector and other organizations. But despite all the efforts to control thought and manufacture consent, people are learning to think through things. People are more skeptical of power and have changed their views on numerous issues. Although it's very slow, even though you might even call it glacial, it's very noticeable and significant. Organization changes things. You learn that you're not alone, and other people think the same way that you do. You can learn more about what you believe and think and keep those thoughts strong. These movements aren't just like membership groups. They're more like a mood in which people can connect with each other, and it really makes a difference. And this is what creates a risk in democracy. If groups can grow and people aren't stuck in front of the TV and their phones, they might start to think all sorts of strange things, like hating the use of military force or that men and women should get the same pay. That being said, it's also very possible for a mass of people to come together and lie to themselves about the world and then use their organization to form a very destructive movement. In other words, what I'm trying to say is, think for yourself. Mass movements can either be good or bad. Join a good one if you want. Thank you.